Welcome everyone to this session on National Industrial Conference Rank 02. I'm Santosh Raikar, and today we're diving into the high-stakes world of industrial shutdowns and turnarounds. We often call this the 72 hours that decide the year, because while a turnaround might last weeks, the success of your entire production year is often determined by the discipline shown in the final 3 days of the restart. Today, we will explore how to master scope, readiness, and the critical path to ensure a safe restart. Let's start with a scenario many of you know too well. It's day 3, 2:17 in the morning. On paper, the schedule is green, but in the field, the reality is messy. We have a recovery boiler fan ready for release, but the replacement bearing arrived without its clearance records. Scaffolding is blocking the alignment laser, and operations is breathing down your neck for steam by dawn. At this moment, a manager isn't just choosing between time and cost. They are choosing between a controlled delay and an unverified restart risk. The question is, what evidence must exist before we allow the clock to keep ticking? Why does this matter so much? From a seasoned practitioner's view, a turnaround is won or lost long before the plant actually stops. The final 72 hours simply expose the quality of your earlier work. We need to view scope as a risk decision, where every added job consumes precious resources. We must replace optimism with evidence-based readiness. All teams must work from a single, integrated clock, and we must treat the startup phase with the same rigor as the shutdown itself. A strong system makes the right action easier when the pressure is at its peak. By the end of this session, you'll be able to define a robust outage governance model and learn how to challenge and freeze scope based on real evidence. We will cover building executable work packs, controlling emergent work without sacrificing safety, and using readiness gates to prevent maintenance-created failures. Finally, we'll look at how to track leading indicators so that every turnaround becomes a learning opportunity for the next one. Our first step is to see the risk clearly. We have to learn how to separate the artificial pressure of the calendar from the actual conditions that create safety and operational risks. Before we can solve problems, we must speak the same language. A shutdown is a controlled stop, but a turnaround is a complex, governed project. We'll be talking a lot about scope freeze, that point where no new work gets in without a formal trade-off, and readiness gates, which are evidence-based go/no-go decisions. We also need to distinguish emergent work found during inspections from PSSR, our final pre-startup safety check. Shared definitions prevent different departments from trying to solve different problems. When a turnaround fails, the loss is much larger than just the maintenance invoice. We are talking about process safety risks where normal layers of protection are weakened, production value lost due to critical path slips, and massive cost exposure from idle contractors. Perhaps most importantly, a rushed restart can actually install the next failure, damaging your future reliability and your plant's reputation. Failure in a turnaround doesn't happen in a vacuum. It develops through a chain of events. It starts months early with a weak scope basis, treating the outage like a wish list. This leads to late scope growth, which causes false readiness because prerequisites aren't met. By the time you get to the field, you face high variability and conflicts, ultimately resulting in a rushed restart. The delay you see at the end is almost always the result of an invisible readiness failure much earlier in the process. There are always warning signs if you know where to look. Watch out for scope churn after the freeze date or crafts waiting around for permits and scaffolds. Rework, access conflicts between crews, and leaks during ramp-up are all red flags. If your team is so rushed that you lose the lessons learned at the end, you're destined to repeat the same mistakes in the next cycle. Identifying these signals early is key to intervention. To know if your system is actually working, you need to answer these 8 questions with evidence, not just good intentions. Can every job be traced to a specific risk? Is there a formal process for late scope? Are materials and contractor competence verified? Is there one integrated schedule? By answering these honestly, you expose the gaps in your system before they turn into field failures. Now that we understand the risks, let's look at building a robust operating model. We want to convert the turnaround from a chaotic event into a gated operating system with auditable outputs. 5 core principles guide this model. First, prioritize risk over volume. Keep the scope lean. Second, require evidence before status turns green. Third, use one integrated plan for all disciplines. Fourth, ensure all exceptions follow a pre-agreed path. And finally, remember that the restart proves the quality of the work. If it doesn't run reliably afterward, the turnaround wasn't a success. We call this the Ready 6 system. It consists of 6 gates: define, freeze, prepare, verify, execute, and finally, restart and learn. Each gate acts as a protective barrier for the next. If you skip the preparation gate, you aren't saving time. You are simply transferring that uncertainty and risk directly into the high-cost execution window. Gate 1 is about defining the mission. This is where the plant manager and turnaround manager appoint the leadership team and set clear objectives for safety, cost, and duration. The output here is an approved charter and a candidate scope based on history and inspections. You are setting the ground rules for the entire event. Gate 2 is the freeze. This is a critical discipline where the steering team challenges every job. We classify work in a mandatory, risk reduction, or opportunity, and we look hard at the consequence of deferring a task. Once the base scope is frozen, any new addition must go through a formal control process. This protects the team from scope creep that can derail the schedule. In Gate 3, we prepare. The planning lead is responsible for building executable work packs that specify every task, tool, and scaffold needed. We aren't just listing jobs. We are logic linking them to milestones in a resource-loaded schedule. The goal is to ensure that when a technician arrives at a machine, everything they need is already there. Gate 4 is all about verification. Before we mobilize, the Readiness Review Board audits the quality of the work packs and material availability. We walk down the site to check for simultaneous operations, SIMOPs, and ensure contractor supervision ratios are correct. This gate produces an evidence-based readiness certificate. It's our go/no-go moment. Gate 5 is execution. The execution manager runs the shift control from a single schedule and a constraint log. We manage permits, isolations, and quality hold points in real time. Any found work must be approved through a risk and critical path impact assessment. We aren't just doing work. We are capturing evidence of as-left conditions as we go. Finally, Gate 6 is restart and learn. The operations manager leads the PSSR and system handovers. We commission the plan against established baselines and track any startup defects. Most importantly, we close the loop by updating our plans and risk registers so that the next turnaround starts from a better baseline. The project isn't over until operation is stable. To keep this system from breaking under pressure, we need clear decision rules. If scope arrives late, we defer it unless the risk/value is documented. If a material is unverified, we remove the job from ready status. If a found condition affects safety, we stop and escalate. These rules ensure that convenience never overrides safety or operational policy. The best plan in the world is useless if it can't be executed. Section 3 focuses on making every job, handoff, and decision executable in the field. Reliability often fails in the gaps between functions, so we must name one accountable owner for every area. The sponsor sets objectives, the TA manager owns the integrated plan, operations owns the handover, and maintenance owns the technical quality. Contractors are our partners. They must follow site controls and report deviations immediately. Clear roles prevent tasks from falling through the cracks. Standard work is how we turn intent into repeatable results. By following the same 7-step sequence, from nomination and challenge to execution and restart, we create a predictable flow of work. This consistency allows the team to focus on solving technical problems rather than wondering how the process is supposed to work. Controls shouldn't just be procedures on a shelf. They must be specific and observable. We use scope control boards to filter late additions, readiness packs to link criteria to owners, and quality hold points to prevent closing a job before it's inspected. SIMOPS controls are vital to managing congestion in the field, ensuring that 2 crews aren't performing incompatible work in the same space. In a turnaround, we need to capture only the minimum data that actually changes a decision. Our data model needs to answer 3 things. Why does this job exist? Is it ready? And how are we performing against the plan? By tracking findings and as-left evidence in real time, we can respond to critical path shifts in minutes, not days. We need measures that trigger action, not just admiration. We pair leading indicators like the readiness index and work pack quality with lagging outcomes like schedule attainment and startup defects. If your readiness index is low, you know you have trouble coming. If your break-in work is high, your scope control was weak. These KPIs tell the true story of the turnaround's health. Management cadence is how culture becomes durable. We need a rhythm, daily huddles to close constraints, weekly reviews to challenge scope, and shift-level control for SIMOPs. Formal go/no-go reviews happen at the gates, and the final learning review ensures we don't lose the hard-won knowledge gained during the outage. This rhythm escalates issues without needing endless, unproductive meetings. Technology should reinforce the discipline you've already defined, whether it's your CMMS for history, a scheduling system for the critical path, or mobile tools for field progress. The tech is only useful if it exposes constraints and preserves evidence for decisions. A historian is particularly valuable for recording shutdown/startup profiles to establish new baselines. Knowledge is only valuable if applied. Now, let's look at how to test this method and create a 90-day plan to sustain these improvements. Let's revisit our opening case. That ID fan job is now controlling the whole outage. We've got a missing certificate, blocked access, a field fit guard, and a manager under pressure for steam. This is the moment of truth. Do you proceed and hope for the best, or do you stop the milestone? The system you have in place determines the answer. A proper intervention changes the system, not just the symptom. Using our framework, we reconfirm the risk, freeze the job until the correct bearing evidence is found, and replan the scaffold and lift access. We don't just push through, we execute with specific hold points for torque and alignment, followed by a stable startup monitoring phase. This is how you reclaim control. Success becomes visible through specific indicators. You'll see no ready status without verified records, alignment access being ready before the crew arrives, and hold points being accepted the first time. The lesson here is clear. Rigor upstream creates options downstream. The schedule must reflect physical readiness, and quality evidence is what actually protects your startup time. Now, let's try a tabletop exercise. Imagine you are 14 hours from startup. You have found work, a tired contractor, and one open PSSR item. How do you decide? You need to verify the facts, identify what is safety critical versus deferrable, and determine who has the authority to make the trade-off. Think about which two indicators you would monitor most closely during that first operating shift. Implementation has its traps. Don't call a wish list scope, require a risk basis. Don't trust percent complete. Look for auditable deliverables. Avoid independent contractor schedules. They must be integrated. And never try to recover the schedule through overtime alone. That leads to fatigue and accidents. Each of these traps has a specific recovery move to keep you on track. Here is a 90-day roadmap. In the first 30 days, baseline your current state and audit past delays. Between days 31 and 60, pilot the new system in one critical area and audit your work packs. In the final 30 days, conduct formal readiness gates and simulate emergent work decisions. Start small, prove the evidence, and then scale. To get management buy-in, you need a credible business case. You must include the costs of dedicated planning and rehearsals, but balance them against the massive value of avoided delays, rework, and production losses. The expected value of a disciplined turnaround is the sum of all the disasters and inefficiencies you didn't have to pay for. Use this 12-point field audit to score your progress. Only score what you can actually observe or trace. Does the charter have measurable objectives? Is every material staged? Are contractor competencies verified? This checklist ensures that readiness isn't just a feeling, but a documented fact. As you head back to your plants, carry these key points. Freeze scope by risk, define readiness as evidence, and integrate everyone into one schedule. Give emergent work a fast decision path and treat the startup as a core part of the project. Leadership commitment means three things: no green without evidence, no late scope without a trade-off, and no startup without verified readiness. For For those who want to dive deeper, we've provided a list of resources including OSHA standards, HSE guidance, and case studies from the U.S. Chemical Safety Board. There are also links to training programs and videos that illustrate the anatomy of turnaround disasters. These are excellent for team training sessions. I'd like to acknowledge the sources for the industrial photography used throughout this presentation. These real-world images help ground these concepts in the physical reality of the plants we work in every day. We'll close with a challenge. For your next outage, what is the one thing you will refuse to assume? Make your readiness visible early while you still have options to change the outcome. Thank you for your time, and let's make our next turnaround the safest and most reliable one yet.